Hi, this is a recording of my presentation from NSTA 2026 about using slide decks as storybooks. This is how we're going to incorporate visual narrative elements to scaffold amazing student learning. So let me introduce myself. My name is Amanda Libke, and that is entirely my husband's fault. I could have fallen in love with someone with a nice normal name, but no, I had to go and fall in love with someone with a German name. At least that's what he told me since we started dating. We always used to make jokes about, being on time because he's German and blah, blah, blah. Well, funny story. So at Christmas, this last Christmas of 2025, my father-in-law, who's like the original Libke, spoke up and said, actually, the name Libke is Pomeranian, which made everybody at the table go, excuse me? I didn't realize that there was a region called Pomerania. Listen, political geography is not my strength, but there is a place called Pomerania, and apparently that is where the Libke name comes from. And now I have the proud honor of being able to say that I have married a Pomeranian. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering why I bothered to tell you that, and that was pretty weird. Well, I've got a reason, I promise. Check your reactions. Do I have your attention, even if it's for a strange reason? Did I spark some story that maybe you would like to share about Christmas dinners and old people being funny and how we name each other, anything like that? And I want to give you a chance to share a story, at least we would if we were in person. This is, of course, a recording. To share a story that you thought of as I introduced myself, because humans are a social species. Telling stories comes very, very naturally to us. It's one of the oldest ways that we have of educating each other, teaching each other, learning from each other, is through narratives and through stories. Unfortunately, we can't tell stories all day long, but we can use story elements, especially visual narrative elements, to create similar connections with our own content in our classes. This is a still shot of a graphic novel version of Madeline L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time. Those of you that are familiar with the story might recognize the scene. This is at the start of the book where Meg gets scared, runs downstairs, and there's her amazing kid brother making hot cocoa for her, or at least making the milk for her. Without being able to read the words there, if you're already familiar with the story, you can kind of pick up on where the story is, and that also sprouted some memories, I'm sure. We're going to look at color and design, meaningful images, and intentional animations as ways of drawing student interest into our content. So let me try that again. My name is Amanda Libke. I'm the science department chair at Kerman High School. I have been teaching 23 years of secondary science. My primary focus is earth and space systems, but I also teach physics, and I have in the past taught middle school science as well. And next year I'm going to be teaching biology for the first time. It should be pretty fun. There's my email if you need to get in touch with me, and I am the Kerman Unified Educator of the Year for last school year, 2024 to 2025. So, you have this handout. This is a chart that you can use to organize your thoughts. You also have a pad of sticky notes that I gave you during the presentation. You want to use those sticky notes to write ideas that you have while the presentation is going on. Stick those sticky notes where you think they should go on this chart. Is it something that you want to use as is? Is it something that you want to change? Is it something that you want to toss? And after the presentation, review your sticky notes and transcribe your information onto this handout so that you have it forever. Now, let's get into the actual content here. Let's make a slide deck storybook, starting with an outline and ending up with something that is going to draw student attention. Your first step, at least my first step, is to make an outline. My brain thinks in lists. I like outlines. It helps me organize my thoughts, but maybe you prefer idea webs. Use whatever you like. Now, disclosure, I used AI for this outline that you see up here for two reasons. First off, I wanted to show you how you can start with something that is AI generated and turn it into something that is meaningful and impactful for your students. But the primary reason is that I literally decided to change up this entire presentation 10 days ago. So I'm giving this presentation on Friday, April 17th. Literally on April 10th, I said, this isn't working, I need to change this. And I didn't have a lot of time to come up with something all on my own. So I did use AI to develop this outline, but you're going to see very quickly that I move away from just the strict black and white that you see over here on the side. So once you've got your outline, you are going to create your slideshow. So we are a Google school, so everything I do here is based off of Google Slides, Google Docs, Google Images, things like that. So if the methods that the images that I'm showing you here aren't super familiar, that's might be why. You're going to create a slideshow with enough slides for all of your topics. Then you're going to take ideas from your outline and turn them into idea boxes. So here is a slide that I made from those first 4 idea boxes. I am already deleting out ideas from the outline that I know is not going to be relevant to what the point is that I'm trying to get across with this particular slideshow. So this is what my slideshow now looks like. I have 6 different ideas from my outline. I went ahead and copied those ideas over to make these boxes, and that's not good enough for me. Now, a lot of educators would stop there. They'd maybe make things line up, or they'd make the font bigger. That is not a storybook. That is barely a news article. We need to add a lot more to this in order to get students interested in what we're doing. Our next step is to organize our topics. You need to think about your narrative flow. So honestly, think about this like a story. What is your story going to tell? What is the story that you are trying to tell with your slide deck? How should your ideas be grouped together, and how should they flow into each other? Those are 2 separate ideas. Not only do you have to have logical groupings, but you also have to have logical flow to go along with that. What needs to be added, moved, or deleted to the ideas that you currently have? So this is where I left off with step 2. I have 6 slides with information from those outlines plopped into it. And this is where I'm done with step 3. So by the time I finish with step 3, I have organized my thoughts. I now have a title slide. I know I'm going to call the slideshow Introduction to Forces. I've also divided up the topics into 2 broad topics. I've got topic 1, what is a force, and topic 2 on quantifying forces. I have found some information that I know I'm going to delete because this is stuff that I personally am going to go through at a later time. And I have moved around some things. So the slide on the left here used to be down like slide 7, and then I added the slide at the very end, slide 8 there, is going to end up being some activities that my students will do. So I have now organized my slides, and I know the narrative, I know the storyline that my slide deck is trying to tell. So, step 4, background and color story. This is my favorite part. In my heart of hearts, besides being a science teacher, I am a graphic designer. Not really, I'm not trained, but I do love it when things are thoughtfully laid out, when colors are used with a purpose, when images draw attention. Let's have some fun with the slide deck. So, choose a background image for your slide deck, just like, take this off for just a moment, just like I chose these storytellers sitting around a campfire for the background of this particular slide deck. You want to choose a background image for your slide deck. Personally, I like to choose images that are silly or engaging whenever possible, and I also like to use the eyedropper tool on whatever program you use to come up with a color story. So a color story is a list, it's like a book of colors that you're going to use as you go through and add text and colors, backgrounds and fills and borders. And I just realized that my slide says a solar story. Gosh, I'm going to have to fix that before I present it. Color story, if you're feeling extra creative. So I chose this background intentionally for this presentation because I really like the idea of comparing people sitting around a campfire telling stories to a lesson design. This is kind of where we are right now. I'm telling the story, but you are engaged in this as well. Okay, so here's where we left off. So now I'm just going to kind of zero in on one slide. So here's a slide that I have on types of forces. I've got a couple of little idea boxes in there. I need a lot more than this. I know that a force is a push or a pull. It's a push or a pull. It's a push or a pull. And listen, I'm 48. I'm Gen X. And I'm a massive Far Side fan. I realize that a lot of teachers might default to using like Star Wars to describe a forces, but I decided to go with this cartoon. I hope some of you recognize it. I decided to use this cartoon of a kid pushing on the door that says pull as the backdrop for my entire slideshow. So here's where I left off on step 3. And here is where I'm at now. All I did was I chose a color story by just using the eyedropper tool to select different colors from my background. I use that to create my title slide, my topic slides. I now have title slides at the top of each slide. So what is a force 1 of 3? What is a force 2 of 3? Etc. And I've got my guy in the background pushing on a pool door, and we're good to go. All right, step 5. Now we need to format the idea boxes. So as of right now, your idea boxes are plain black and white. You now have a color story that you can use to amplify your idea boxes, and you get to use your favorite fonts. But I do have a couple of tips when it comes to formatting your idea boxes. First off, your font needs to be at least 20 point. That's how the size of the font, if you're not familiar. The font that you're seeing here is 26 point. I want to say that up in my title slides, like the step 5 format idea boxes, that's probably a 32 point. It has to be at least 20 point if you want it to be seen from any amount of distance. My favorite fonts are skinny ones. If I'm on Google Slides, I like Anton because it's a really narrow font. On PowerPoint, which is what this presentation has been put onto, I use PowerPoint to generate this presentation. I like Arial Narrow again because it's a condensed font. The skinnier the font, the more information that you can squeeze onto a box, and I just like the way that things line up when you use that. You also want to make sure that there is a strong contrast between whatever color you use for your font and your background color. I'm going to call out my own district for doing this. My school's colors are red and black, and my administration likes to give presentations that have a red background and black font, and the black font is not big enough and you can't read it. So this is an example of a well-formatted idea box. There is a strong contrast between the background color and the text color. The text is big enough to be able to see from a distance, and it's a relatively simple text. That is helpful for students who might have visual processing disorders or dyslexia, things like that. So this is, keep the font simple if you can. This is an example of a idea box that needs some work. The font is too small. This is 15 point times New Roman. It's too small to be read from a distance. The color choice is bad. So I used a dark color and sort of a mid-range font color, but if you're 10 feet away from the front, or 10 feet away from the presentation, you're not going to be able to actually see this color. So that particular box needs some work. So here is where I stopped with step 4. I have my idea boxes, and now I'm going to format them. I'm going to use my color story to choose background images and to choose font colors. I purposely made the font really big. I think I used like 28 on a Google Slides right here, and they're gonna get condensed down eventually, but I like to sort of start to fill the space with my idea boxes at this point. So here's where I left off on step 4, and here's where I am at step 5. Another trick that I like to do that you can see on my title slides here is I like to use a background that is transparent sometimes, like a transparent black is something that I use a lot in my work. What it does is it allows you to see the image in the background, but also read what the text is in the foreground. Moving on to step 6, now we get to add images. This is almost as much fun as choosing the background and doing your color story. Keep in mind that your images need to add meaning to your idea boxes, and you want them to catch the student's attention. So think about what your students are doing with your slides. Are they copying information? If that's what you want them to do, then you better have some really simple images. Are they explaining new ideas? Are they solving some kind of a problem? The images that you choose need to fit your lesson goals. I don't often have students copying stuff off the board. I expect them to take my images, take my slides, and synthesize them into something new in their notebooks. So some of my favorite image tips are Using animated GIFs to show simple processes. I like animated GIFs for a couple of reasons. First off, motion catches the eye. We're going to talk about that when we get to step 8. Motion catches the eye, and if the GIF is good, it can really get down to what it is that the concept is that you're trying to get across. I've even made my own animated GIFs. Pre-2022, I used PowerPoint to make my own GIFs. I didn't use AI. I rarely use AI. I'm still ashamed that I used AI for that outline, but here we are. I rarely use AI to make anything, but you can create your own animated GIFs if you can't find something that you like. Another good thing about animated GIFs is that they can't be copied easily. Students have to turn those ideas in an animated GIF into something unique and special. Speaking of things that are difficult to copy, photographs are also difficult to copy. Now, I tell my students directly, if I show them a photo of something and I'm asking them to do notes, I right away tell them I don't expect you to draw the photo perfectly. That's not the point. But if they're looking at a photo and trying their best to draw something that is related to that photo, then they will remember what the photo looked like in the future when they look at your notes. It's the same thing as taking notes off of a video. You can't record, well, you can record the video, but your students aren't expected to record the video. They're expected to write down ideas as they watch the video. They read those ideas and they remember what the video was. Same thing with photos. They are difficult to copy, and this forces students to create their own drawings. I also, again, like to tailor my slides to my specific content by making my own images and animations. This slideshow had to be limited to a certain file size. I had to make sure that I was under 40 megabytes in order to be able to upload this onto the NSTA sharing website. I went ahead and put in a bunch of my own animated GIFs that I have made, and it ended up popping up the slide to like 87 megabytes, so I had to get rid of all those. There is a link to my personal classroom website where I will put in as many of those GIFs as I can so that you can see them. But it is something that you can do to just make it more meaningful. So here's where we left off at step 5. I have my idea boxes formatted, and then I just found some images and GIFs that I liked. So I've got a bit of a theme going on the left there with non-contact forces with gravity falls, and on the right I just found this simple GIF of the scary guy pulling a box for contact forces. So here's step 5 and step 6. I now have lots and lots of images ready to go. Step 7, this is the final design. This is where you line everything up and make sure that you fill the space. I've only ever used Google Slides and PowerPoint, but in both cases there are grid lines that you can open up and snap things to. I like the symmetry of having things spaced out equally and having things centered on my slide. It just makes my brain happy. And it seems to be something that my students appreciate as well. So again, think about graphic novels. Here's that same image of the graphic novel of A Wrinkle in Time. Everything is spaced out, everything is lined up, and it's soothing in a way. So we're making our final design. I want to fill the space. This is my slide, and this is what I ended up with. This is a screenshot, which is why my guy over there on the left is not pulling his box. Notice that I flip-flopped the different topics. That's fine. No one's telling me I can't. I have added ideas to each of these boxes. I have centered everything. I have added some arrows. I've added some borders to the pictures. Here's where I was at step 6, and here's where I am now at step 7. So the slideshow is almost done. Almost done. This would be great if you were making a PDF, but we're not. We're making a storybook slide deck, and we are going to next add some animations to our drawing. Brains like motion. I've added something to my slide. Some of you may have seen it, some of you may not. How often have you had to wait for something to move before you actually saw it? Okay, some of you may have noticed hey off to the left there, but some of you didn't, not until he started to move. Motions are important in a slide deck. Motions in sequence can add flow to your narrative, like which part do you focus on next? And they can also make items stand out from a sea of ideas on a slide. Again, forcing this narrative flow of information. We want this to open up like a story. This and then this and then this and then this. So here is my slide all set up, and here is the slide that I presented to my students with animations. First off, this is a screenshot of my Google Slides. When I put this onto PowerPoint, I had to change up the fonts. Just be aware of that. So, what is a force? Contact forces happen between objects that are touching each other. I have my animated GIF. I discuss pulling going one way and friction going the other way. Contact forces because they have to touch. Now, I haven't talked about vectors yet, but there is a bit of information here about which force is stronger and which direction the object is going to be moving in. Non-contact forces are forces that happen between objects that are not touching, like gravity or magnetism. So I just laid out the story of this slide by using the animations. Okay. All 8 steps are complete. Let me show you the evolution of one single slide. We're going to start with the outline. Okay, what is it that we're trying to get across? That's step 1. Step 2, turn that into idea boxes. Step 3, decide what you're going to keep and reorganize your thoughts. So I deleted something right away there. Step 4, add your color story and add your background image. Step 5, you want to then format your idea boxes using your color story. Step 6, find the images that you plan on using in your slide. Step 7, put everything together nice and neat. And then step 8, we have our finished slide. So a force is a push or a pull on an object. Forces can change the motion or the shape of objects, or sometimes both. Forces are vector quantities. We've already learned about velocity and acceleration in this class, so we know that they have a magnitude and a direction, and just in case it wasn't obvious, the vectors in this animation are showing gravity, how it acts on both the Earth and the Moon. That is a storybook slide. Now, I want to show you the entire finished slide deck that I put together for this presentation, starting at the beginning, ending straight through. So, let me introduce you to forces, starting with what is a force. I just went through this slide, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it. Can change the motion, can change the shape. Forces are vector quantities, etc. I've gone through this slide too, so I'm going to kind of speed this up. Contact forces happen between objects that are touching each other. We have pulling, we have friction, and they have to touch in order for the contact force to be a contact force. Gravity and magnetism are examples of non-contact forces. That is slide 2 of 3 within the concept of what is a force. New stuff. What is a force? This is slide 3 of 3. What factors affect forces? Well, contact forces can be affected by surface area and texture. Wheels minimize the effect of friction because the contact area is reduced. In non-contact forces, we have distance affecting gravity and magnetism. If two objects are closer together, you have stronger gravity. If they are further apart, you have weaker gravity. And as we learned back in unit number 3, magnetic field lines that are closer together, like close to the poles, are going to be stronger than, or is going to show a stronger magnetic field. Mass can affect both contact forces and non-contact forces. For a non-contact force, more mass means more gravity, and for a contact force, it takes more force to move bigger masses. Of course, if I was teaching this to a class, I would slow way down and actually discuss things. I want to point out that over here on the right, in the non-contact forces, I made my own image with circles and with arrows to show stronger gravity and weaker gravity. I also color-coded my mass non-contact box and my contact force mass box as well. Okay, second topic is quantifying forces. We have slide 1 of 2. Forces are measured in newtons. Students already know that a force is a mass times acceleration. We look at the units, and 1 newton is equal to 1 kilogram times a meter per second squared. This means that a newton is 1 kilogram meter per second squared, but be careful because if the mass of an object in your system is not in kilograms, you're going to have to change it to kilograms in order to make newtons work. Then I introduced my students to a spring scale because on my last slide here, we are going to play around with some forces. So this slide looks a little different. This is not an informational slide. They put this grid on their notebooks, and they had 4 different stations around the classroom that they went and did something with forces. So in the first station, they hung different masses from spring scales vertically to observe the results. Second station, they had boxes of different masses and different textures to slide across different surfaces. In the third station, we played a game with magnetic rocks, and in the fourth station, we played Clask. So technically, there are no images on this slide, but this is purely informational, so that students could go to the actual station and do their activity. And that's how you make a storybook slideshow. Please ask any questions that you might have, and thank you so much for your focus. So this is the presentation evaluation QR code. This is a link to my resource folder. That's just like a screenshot of the resources. It's too small to read, I'm sorry. But if you look, if you go to that tiny URL right there, you'll go to my personal Earth Science classroom page. I added an extra page for this conference. You'll see step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, going all through 8 steps, the actual slide shows that I put together for each step, so you can see that. You'll also find a link to this video that I'm making right now, as well as to the handout. Thank you so much for your focus, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Bye.